Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our World Elder Abuse Awareness Day webinar. I'm Jane Carlson from Department of Family Services, here with Mark Kelly, the Program Specialist for Department of Health Aging Division. And we also want to give a shout out to Patty Hall, our State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. She could not be with us today. She's taking care of some other unavoidable obligations, but she was very instrumental in developing this webinar as well. So we just wanted to give her a quick shout out, like I said. Just a quick note that we are recording this webinar, and so we were going to go ahead and try to save questions for the end. But if you have something burning that you have to get off your chest, feel free to use the chat. You can also unmute yourself and ask the question, but just know that you'll be recorded. So anyway, and then at the end, we were going to turn off the recording when we did our Q&A session. So anyway, and with that, I will continue. Mark, next slide, if you don't mind. Just some objectives that we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on identifying the signs of elder abuse. We are going to look at how to report a concern when abuse is suspected. We're going to learn the steps that you can take to prevent elder abuse from happening if that's something that you're encountering. Next slide.
And we want to let you know that everybody in Wyoming is a mandated reporter, regardless of who you are. So if you work in the back office, or you're directly working with older adults, or you're working in the field of nutrition, or just a general pharmacist, or anybody really, we are all mandated reporters. So if you see something, you should and must report it. So we ask you to stay alert and improve lives. And before we go into what to spot and how to report elder abuse that you see, we wanted to go over some of these statistics here, which may surprise you. So let's go start with the top one here. About 1 in 10 Americans aged 60 plus have experienced abuse. That is from recent studies. That's around 5 million older adults per year who, from studies, do go through abuse. That is a lot of people. So we know that it is underreported, and that's the second statistic down there. Elder abuse is underreported. So for every one elder abuse case known to programs and agencies, 23.5 were unknown. And in further studies, only 1 in 14 cases of elder abuse ever comes to the attention of authorities, and some studies say 1 in 24. So but between 14 and 23.5 unreported, and we only know about 1 of those. So we know this is a huge problem, and it is up to all of you here today and your extended networks, business and family and all other networks. It's your job to report whatever you see. Now, the impact of elder abuse is felt by people of all ages because it reverberates down a generations, people who have older adults who go through that. There are things that people feel guilty, people feel like they should have done more, but so we need to be vigilant for everybody, not just for ourselves and our immediate family. Also, there's a huge issue with financial exploitation of older adults, and take a look at some of these figures here. Now, we did this seminar back in 2020, and we found some updated statistics that shows that back in 2009, there was $2.9 billion worth of financial exploitation and stealing money from older adults, which increased 12% in that year alone. We've seen it jump to $36.5 billion worth of financial exploitation in February 2021. So for anybody you know and has access and handles finances of older adults, or you're aware of, you're connected to the financial strategies of older adults, you should be aware of how big a problem this is and what we need to do to solve it. And I just want to bring your attention to the quote down here. Without accessible quality health and public services, our population becomes more at risk for abuse as we age. And I'll just move on to the next slide. Over to you, Jane.
Get myself off of mute there. So here's some signs of elder abuse. I'm not gonna read through all of these, but just a couple that I wanted to bring everybody's attention to here is in Wyoming, we have a specific statute regarding threats to family, friends, and pets. I always think that that's kind of neat, really, that it includes pets, because as we all know, if we've had any kind of interaction with elderly people, a lot of them consider their pets family. So I always kind of appreciate that. And then just to bring everybody's attention also to the physical part of some of this, cuts, sores, burns, even something that might seem kind of simple, like the missing daily living aids, such as glasses, a walker, medications, anything like that is it's a fairly easy fix. A lot of senior centers have a closet that you can rent stuff like that out of. So it can often be just as easy as providing our elderly people or our disabled people with things like that. And then, of course, as Mark was talking about in the previous slide, we have the financial exploitation. That's huge and up and coming. It has been for a long time now. Some of the scams I would like to point out are the grandparent scams, the money mule scams, Social Security calling people on the phone and saying, hey, you need to pay $800 right away or you're going to be thrown in jail. Those are the kind of scams that I'm speaking about. And of course, we also have the COVID vaccine scams, or really any kind of COVID scams now are kind of the real concerns. So those are some real quick signs of elder abuse. And again, if anybody has questions, please put that in the chat, or we'll have some questions at the end, or question and answer session at the end as well. Next slide.
Thank you. Just before we move on, Jane, I just want to sort of touch on those online scams as well, and the telephone scams. They play on the fears of older adults. So their grandchildren who may be in trouble, and they get a phone call and said, "Grandma, I'm in Mexico and I'm stuck and I need $1,000 so I can get back home." And they'll be pulling on cues from the older adults, like the older adults would offer information and they would agree with it, and it would convince them. So it's being aware of people who would be vulnerable to that kind of exploitation, making them aware to be more cautious when answering the telephone or using computers and getting sort of pop-ups and so on, because any way that people can communicate out, hackers and scammers and people with dubious intent can infiltrate, and as we saw, that financial abuse has skyrocketed. So I just wanted to add that, but thank you, Jane. I'll move to the next slide.
Yes, that's true, Mark. Thanks for pointing that out.
So any sign may be a crime, so please report it. We can't stress to you all enough that if you have any suspicions and you have a gut feeling that something isn't right, don't double guess yourself. Do not think, oh, they're not going to be it's not that important, it's probably nothing. Hopefully it is nothing, but that's not your call to make, and your information may be that key that will help to solve a case that's pending, or may start an investigation when needed. And obviously if it is nothing, then it's okay. You have a suspicion, you're using your intellect to decide, okay, something isn't right here. We ask that you please report it. That is very important. So we have these graphics here. Just want to talk through those with you all. When we get to the signs, we've already gone through the signs, please memorize and go through them again. We will have this as a PDF document on the Community Living section website. And this video will be available in the next week or so for you to view. And we ask that you memorize those signs, and there are other resources out there as well. every point of contact is a chance to look for signs. No matter how small your contact is with older adults, that is a chance for you to be aware that elder abuse does happen, and you should be keeping your ears to the ground and keeping vigilant to what's going on, to everything that's going on around them. If you see something, say something, and small suspicions are enough to make a report. Again, Department of Family Services and the Ombudsman will make a decision on what happens next and how it moves forward. And Jane will go talk about that more later. So be aware that your job is to take action when you spot the 3 kinds of abuse that we are pinpointed in this presentation: emotional and behavioral abuse, where, you know, the emotional manipulation, obviously behavioral, and then we have the physical side, where, as you know, sores and bruises and so on, but there are other kinds, as you saw in the previous slide, and the financial side. So please be aware of all of that. And let's move to the next slide. Jane.
So here's where we discuss how to report abuse of a vulnerable adult. And I just wanted to point out really quick that this is in our statute. Our elder abuse statutes are 3520-101 through 3520-116. They're actually referred to as the Adult Protective Services Act. And so here we have clear laws regarding reporting, and what you need to do is if you suspect abuse or neglect, you report immediately to either Department of Family Services or law enforcement agencies such as police, sheriff's department, highway patrol. Here we've even named the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit or Department of Criminal Investigation. And again, just a reminder that anybody who in good faith makes a report, you are immune from civil liability for making the report. And that, I think that's all that I really wanted to say about it. I can't stress enough that everyone in Wyoming is a mandatory reporter, and you need to report immediately to either Department of Family Services or law enforcement. And next slide, please. So here's the reporting process. So a reporter contacts local DFS office of the county where the concern is taking place. So that means if you're in, let's say, Cody, Wyoming, you should be able to find the local office DFS number online, or you can always, like I said, call your local law enforcement up there. You can call the sheriff's department or the police department. After that, the reporter, it's great if you have any kind of identifying information about the vulnerable adult. We really need their name, their location, as well as the nature of the concern. After that, DFS screens the report to see if it meets the statute and policy definitions of abuse, neglect, self-neglect. After that, a case is opened, depending on the above screening process, and the vulnerable adult will be contacted within 3 days of the report being made, unless an immediate response is required. And that an immediate response just means if the vulnerable adult is in imminent danger. Let's say their caregiver is, physically violent or something like that, we would consider that an immediate response, which means DFS or the police or both need to make contact within 24 hours or less. So as a reporter, you do have the right to remain anonymous, and a lot of people do. They don't want their names to be given. They don't want any link to the report that they're making, and that really is fine. The only thing I would say about that is if you are the reporter and let's say DFS or law enforcement has questions that they need to ask after you've made the report, let's say a few days later or whatever, it would be great to have a name and a phone number, or at least a phone number of the reporter. And again, you're exempt from civil or criminal liability in making a report, unless of course it's a false report. So DFS cannot call a reporter back to let them know what occurred based on their report. And this is due to very strict confidentiality restrictions that we have per the state statutes that I just had mentioned a little bit ago. And this honestly makes a lot of people pretty mad. They want to be able to call back and say, hey, what happened to my grandma, or to my neighbor across the street. They really want to know. And I understand that. I think everybody can understand that. But because of our confidentiality laws, we cannot disclose any information to reporters about how the case is going or what the end result was. So in all cases, reports, and referrals, the vulnerable adult does have the right to choose how they want to live. And DFS does not have the authority to force the adult in question to make a different decision from what they want to do, which is also very, very frustrating to a lot of people. A lot of times, other people, like reporters for, somebody who makes a report, for example, they feel like the vulnerable adult isn't living the way that they should live. And therefore they want Department of Family Services or law enforcement to sort of force that vulnerable adult to live in a certain way. And that's just not something that law enforcement or DFS is able to do. Next slide, Mark. So here we're just kind of talking about what can providers do, and they can report elder abuse by calling the Adult Protective Services phone number this is out of the Cheyenne State Office. And so the state office, the 777-7564 phone number goes straight to the office that's near the Capitol. And whoever answers that phone will direct you to whatever local office you're wanting to get in contact with to make a report. You can also call your local law enforcement non-emergency line. And then if it's after hours, let's say it's not during business hours or it's on the weekend, if you have a report to make, you can call 911 and report that to the police. And then the police are able to get in touch with whoever from DFS is on call in any of our counties. And then over on the right in the little yellow scroll is our Department of Family Services website. And so all those local office phone numbers and addresses are also on there. And I think that slide's actually coming up next. Mark, if you want to change it.
Oh, yeah. And just trying to put up the website as well briefly so you can see what it comes to. We'll be going over these in the slide, but this is what you'll see on the website. If you go into dfs.wire.gov, contact us, all the local offices are there. But and we also want to sort of remind you that it is important that you report it, but your discretion about when and how is advised in terms of, if it's a minor thing, can it wait till the next day? If you feel like you need to get it done then, please do, even if it's the emergency line. But think about, is this a real emergency, life or death, or can it wait to the next business day when investigation can be started? So we'd ask you to use your discretion there. But the most important thing is that you report it. Don't forget about it. Don't leave it, and so on. So let's go to the next slide.
So on these next two slides, we have pretty much every office. I'm sure there's every office. Yeah. Phone number and address here of every local office we have. We even have included the Eastern Shoshone and the Northern Arapaho offices and phone numbers as well. And I think you can, yeah, thanks, Mark. Anyway, so yeah, if anybody ever has any questions about that, just refer to our website.
Yes, and the Teton office has a different mailing address. So we've emphasized it here with the physical address. You can just contact the local office for the mail-in if you ever need to. But most of the time, and most importantly, you will just need to telephone and call these local offices. You will probably not need to mail as much. Just wanted to emphasize that, but this will be available for you should you have the PDF and want to refer back to it for your local office. And the next slide that's coming up will be a video. And Jane, I'm just going to set up the sound on here.
Okay.
And Jane will be explaining more about the video once the video is finished. Let's move on now. So now we have Donna's story.
He would say stuff like, the only reason I keep you around is so I can see the grandkids. You'll never make it without. This was a constant, everyday thing. You're not going to make it. Your credit stinks. Nobody wants you. It was just put downs all the time. Of my self-esteem was gone. I didn't see no hope. I didn't see any end. I'll be honest. I wanted to kill myself. I had thought I was so unhappy, and I didn't know how to get out of it. So I needed some outlet to talk to somebody. I was so miserable. I don't know how many times I thought about driving off the bridge on my way to work or whatever. I just, sometimes when you feel trapped, you don't know what to do. You don't know where to go.
The abuse was more emotional and verbal and financial and just controlling.
Sorry about that. I don't know why the video is
Than
paused.
it was physical abuse. And very often that's the type of abuse that's hard for somebody to recognize. It's hard for people out in the community to recognize, but also hard for a victim to recognize and label as being domestic violence.
So as we can say there with Donna's story, that the abuse, it degrades people. It makes people feel like that they don't have hope, they don't have an exit, and that this is all that they are going to be living for. This is it. This is their life now. And if you know somebody, male or female, in this kind of situation where they are put down and where they are boxed into a mental corner where they feel hopeless, please do report it, because those situations are just horrid to live in. And we it is our duty as mandated reporters to not sit by and not think, oh, this is just husband and wife, this is just how things are. It isn't. Isn't how it should be. And we have to be vigilant sometimes. And especially in my culture in Britain, we kind of leave people, let people do what they do, and then we do what we do. But we have to break those cycles. We have to be involved and look out for people in need or people who are vulnerable. Jane, is anything else you want to add here?
Yeah, I would just add here that if this is the type of referral that came through one of our Department of Family Services offices in Wyoming, we would open up a case. We would probably open up perhaps what we call an assessment case. And we would go out and make contact with Donna, but it should be, I just need to emphasize as well that our domestic violence partners across the state are very important people for vulnerable adults. And so that would be who we would partner with in regards to trying to help Donna. And we would also partner, of course, with law enforcement, but definitely our domestic violence friends would be people that we would try to connect Donna with and try to help her in her situation, certainly. And I think that's all that I have for Donna, other than just making sure that she's as safe as we would make sure that she's as safe as she would allow us to make her. So.
Thank you. So we have two more videos with two similar, two more stories. So I just want everybody to be aware, and thank you for watching these.
When he was finished with me, he put me back on the bed. Everything was done from behind, and he had me out on my bed like this. And he covered me up with all my bedding, and he goes, "Do you know your family?" And I said, "What?" He said, "I know your family." He said, "You say anything about what happened to you here?" He says, "I'll take them out, I'll come back and I'll kill you." And when I realized he closed the the door. I just said the Lord's Prayer, reached for my phone and dialed 911.
A number of officers were able to respond. We had a lot of things going for us. There was snow on the ground. We were able to follow footprints. The person was intoxicated, so they weren't thinking clearly. They made a lot of mistakes, including dropping personal items. So within a very short time, we zeroed in on the person that was responsible.
So part of the backstory there was cut off, but in this case, there she didn't know this individual, but there are cases where they will know these individuals these attackers who do this, and the infiltration and the sort of weaseling into their lives happens, and then the abuse will start. And it's being aware of these relationships and these odd situations where it doesn't feel right. Something is off, and if it doesn't feel right, reporting it, because maybe it's perfectly innocent, or maybe it's not, and then abuse will happen later if you don't report it. And so I will just stress, anything that's out of the ordinary, please do report. Jane, anything to add here?
As you can see from this story, from Linda's story, it's very, very personal and very probably embarrassing. I'm very glad that she had the courage to report it. So this would be one where Department of Family Services and law enforcement would team up, and it would be an investigation. We would then I'm sure that whoever this, like the officer said, they were able to zero in on the person that was responsible. Hopefully they would have enough information that person would be, would be facing some kind of a conviction. For DFS, it would be one where we'd be able to substantiate elder abuse, hopefully. And so it would be, this perpetrator would get what's coming to him. So that's and not only that, Department of Family Services would offer services to Linda, probably some kind of, victim services, not just victim services, as well as some sort of mental health services. We would offer those things to her and try to help her in any way that we could in regards to those types of things as well.
Thank you. And Jane, I don't know if you can sort of explain to us a bit about how important is evidence from mandated reporters? How influential is it in resulting in stopping the abuse, convicting people who are abusers? I don't know if you can explain a little bit about how much, on average, you would say these pieces of evidence that people just report in are crucial to cases.
Yeah, it's certainly just really any kind of shred of information that a reporter might have is super important for us, because it helps law enforcement and Department of Family Services figure out exactly what kind of report we're dealing with, what kind of information that we have going in. It depends on how close the reporter is to the alleged victim as well. So for Linda, let's say that maybe her sister came in and found her after her attacker perpetrated on her. Somebody like that would be crucial in being able to see, maybe she's the one that found the footprints in the snow, and maybe she's the one that was able to talk with Linda, right after it happened. So somebody like that who saw everything right away and was able to just really provide a lot of information about how it happened, what happened, maybe when it happened, that would be extremely crucial. Just all of that identifying information is super important for law enforcement and Department of Family Services.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone, if you have questions or comments, please use the chat. We welcome those, and we're checking the chat for your questions. But we have one more video story now to show you. This will be Tammy's story.
it got to a point where he was really strong-arming me, you know, like he'd take my arm and twist it behind my back and try and force me to do what I didn't want to do. And, you know, there was a couple of times when he'd do that, and I'm not as strong as him. I'm not a man. I couldn't handle that, but he would try and force himself. So, I mean, it got to a point where I threatened to call the police if he didn't leave me alone. I needed to go. I needed to get away. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. I didn't want him to come back there. I didn't want to have confrontation with him. And so that's what I did. I packed up everything and moved it into a storage. Went back to the apartment, wrote a note and left the key for the apartment. I left the key there and I called the manager and told him that I was moving out and I wasn't gonna come back. I was leaving the key. And as I closed the door, I'm locked out now. I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? I don't have money to go rent a motel or anything like that. So, and I'm hot and sweaty and so by now it's dark and I'm thinking, where am I gonna go? I don't know anybody out here. So what did I do? I went back to the storage that I had rented, put the things in, and that's where I stayed that night. I didn't know what else to do.
And so, again, I apologize for the video not having more of the backstory. But with Tammy here, as you can see, this is an example of spousal abuse, and this is long term. This is long term controlling. She had no control over her finances. She had no control over what she did, where she went, and in the end, thankfully, she got out. But then she was in a desperate situation where she didn't know where to turn. You know, maybe she'd been in the situation for many years, and then the longer you're in a situation of abuse, the harder it is to get out, and the more therapy and work needs to be done to help the victim to recover their life. And so catching these situations as early as possible would be crucial. If you're a senior center delivering meals to this family and you notice a very controlling spouse, again, report it, because it may be nothing, but it may be something. And you do not want to miss the something if it adds to or starts an investigation, with DFS will then pursue and see what's going on. And obviously, these three stories here are being female, but elder abuse can happen to any gender, and to be aware that to spot for everybody. Jane, anything to add?
Just these are tough ones because, like Mark was saying, it's spousal abuse. It takes a lot of courage for somebody like Tammy to leave like she did. That's incredibly hard. I've actually worked a couple of cases just like this, and the lady in question doesn't have the courage to leave, even though I've sat with her and spoke with her at length by herself, offered all the help that I can think of to offer. They still don't have the courage to leave, and it's very, very troubling. But what I was going to say is if, and Tammy was able to go to her storage unit, I'm hoping that that the end of this story, or I should say maybe the beginning for Tammy, would be for her to make contact with somebody from Department of Family Services or law enforcement. We would have, if she made contact with law enforcement, let's say, they would contact Department of Family Services or Domestic Violence Services. There would be some kind of help for Tammy for housing and a place for her to stay, a safe place for her to be. We would try to figure out, maybe somebody that she could connect with that could help her in regards to her own. Maybe she has a family member a couple of states away that we could get her to if that's what she wanted. Those are the types of things that we would try to find her safety circle. And we would try to help her in that regard as well. Not to mention any other services that we could try to help her with in regards to counseling or maybe figure out a church group for her, or just anything that she wanted and was comfortable with. That's what we would try to help her figure out. So
Thank you.
that's all for that one, Mark.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that all of these resources, and you'll see the icon, the logos in the corner, these came from the National Center on Elder Abuse. So if you do want to find more resources or research, all of the information we have here has come from said sources, and there'll be a reference page. So please view that later if you want to find out more on these topics. But obviously we've seen some cases now. We've read the signs, and you've seen what signs that you should be spotting, and those aren't an exhaustive list, and I will go back to those afterwards. But there are things that you can do, and this next slide will point, and I'm going to talk about these 12 things that everybody who has any kind of contact with an older adult or their financial affairs, or in any way, there are things that you can do. So the first and most important one is that you remember the signs. And again, I will go back to that slide. So you can either make notes, or you can sort of review things that you may not be familiar with. The most important thing you can do is remember the signs, because when you're in the situation where you're meeting with the older adult, you're handling their services and you're helping them, you don't have time to refer to a manual or to a poster. You need to have memorized these. So I want to stress to directors and anybody who's a manager to ask your staff members and anybody volunteers to memorize the signs. And again, the PDF will be on the website. Once that's memorized, you will then be able to act and report it, but also the following things which will be done as a sort of an active approach to being aware of elder abuse in general. So you can volunteer to be a friendly visitor to a nursing home or to a homebound older adult in our community. The more contact they have with other people, the less likelihood there is of an abuser controlling their life, making their life miserable to the point where, like we saw with, I believe it was Donna, she was contemplating suicide. And that's a horrible situation where I would hope there are people who could have spotted that and prevented that from escalating. Prevent isolation by calling or visiting older adults, and not just volunteering your time, but just visiting. If you have older relatives, or there's elderly neighbors who don't get out, just pop around and say hello, and just to keep an eye on them and their situation. You can also send a letter to a local paper, radio, or TV station suggesting that they cover next year's Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And again, anything you can do in your communities is going to be useful, because it's the community level which is vital to stop elder abuse. We can do as much as we can from the state level, which we are doing, but it's really down to everybody listening today to help prevent this from happening. Now, you can also join Ageless Alliance, organization which is there. We stand for the dignity of older adults and the elimination of elder abuse. So that's something you can be part of in your organization. Next slide. If you are able to, if you have the resources, or you're able to help financially, to give caregivers a break and enable respite care in any way possible, it stops any situations where, hopefully not, but these things could happen where caregivers are the abuser. And stopping that sort of mental hardship where they may be led to situations of abusing. From the financial side, we encourage local bank managers to train their tellers on how to detect elder financial abuse. And if you are in a local community and there are local bank, or maybe you are a bank manager, and you would like to talk to the local bank staff or talk to the manager and train how to spot abuse happening, financial abuse. And again, if you want more information on that, you can contact myself, Jane, or Patricia Hall, who's not here today, and we'll be able to give you more information on that. You can educate doctors to ask all older patients about possible family violence in their lives. So again, any contacts that an older adult has with the outside world, so bank institutions, healthcare providers, and those are chances to spot signs of abuse and then report it. So obviously contacting the local APS services, long-term care ombudsman, is crucial to how you can prevent elder abuse. You can also do awareness campaigns with local schools. and local religious communities as well. Again, any opportunity where people interact with older adults is a chance to spot signs and a chance to prevent this from happening. And you can talk to friends and family members about how we can all age well and reduce abuse for programs and services like improved law enforcement. So if you are on a committee or a board where you are speaking to local law enforcement, help raise awareness of the issues of elder abuse so they are more attuned to these situations when they go on calls to people's residences, and they'll be more aware of what to spot and what is wrong and what is okay. And it's up to all of us to prevent and address elder abuse through our employees and family members. Everybody has a part to play. So I would like now to jump back to the slide with the signs, and hint, hint, there may well be a pop quiz later on. Be aware of these things, write them down. If you're in an office situation, you can write these down. Again, fear or anxiety may be signs if it's increased suddenly when they weren't fearful or anxious before. Sudden sexually transmitted diseases are an obvious sign of physical abuse. And unpaid bills, fake signatures on documents when they maybe weren't even interested in doing something or selling their home, or sometimes people that we think we can trust may not always be as trustworthy. So certain lawyers and law firms may not have their best interests at heart. So always be aware, always be vigilant, and we hope that everybody has elders' best interests at heart. Let me now jump back to where we were. So we got a summary section now. So again, the most important things are any sign may be a crime, please report it. Small suspicions are enough. Please do not think that you are, oh, this is not really a big deal. DFS has got a lot on and they're not interested in my small worries about my neighbor, my friend next door, or this older adult that I know. Please do report everything. Don't hesitate. And again, take action. Because every point of contact is a chance to look for signs. And the most important thing that you can do from this seminar is to learn those signs and then to act on them if you have a trigger and a little alarm bell rings in your brain that something isn't right. It is your duty, mandated reporter, to report it. So communicate regularly with participants to spot changes. So if it's a family member and you don't see them but once a year or every few months, then you may not be as clued in to what would be an abuse, as a situation of abuse, because you don't know their regular day-to-day situation. So the more involved you can be with older adults as much as you can, everybody knows there's a lot going on in life, but that is how you will be able to help them the most. And networking. So if you are senior centers out there, and thank you for joining us today, try and get involved with local banks and anywhere where local healthcare providers, and just raise awareness. Maybe print off some of the resources that we've got, a couple of posters, and then at least doctors and the banks and so on, the church organizations, will be more aware of what's going on. And that's it from me. Jane.
Okay, we're going to do a knowledge check. And Mark, if you could bring the poll up in regards to what are the signs of elder abuse. And I think in this poll, you can check all that apply. If you think something applies, go ahead and check it.
That's right. Yeah. So, and again, these are anonymous. We're using this to see how much you've gained from this or not, and that's okay, because and putting it down will be able to help us to help you. So we'll give you a minute or two on that, so give plenty of time to read all those responses. So which of these are signs of elder abuse? Again, you can pick more than one, and it's completely anonymous. We'll set it up like that, so don't worry. Please pick all of them that apply. And you'll probably see on the timer it's been 1 minute now. So when it reaches 2 minutes, we'll close the poll and we'll then talk about the results. Okay, thank you to everybody who participated there. Let me share the results, and Jane, over to you.
Yeah, so I think for the most part, everybody's understanding what the signs are of elder abuse. I see that 85% picked threats to pets. And like we were talking about earlier, that's certainly one of them. Feeling grumpy may or may not be. It just kind of depends. I mean, if you're in contact with a vulnerable adult whose disposition is completely changed, that can certainly be a sign of something happening. Utilities being turned off, certainly that could be a sign of somebody who is experiencing some financial exploitation for any reason, really. If they're easily startled, that can be a sign of something that's going on, perhaps a domestic violence situation. You just never know. A change in living conditions, that can certainly be one that's a red flag. A finger-sized bruise on the arm, certainly that can be something that's pointed to some sort of physical abuse. The diagnosis of herpes, yeah, that could be a sign of some sort of sexual abuse that's happening to the vulnerable adult. Yeah, I think all of our people here that are webinar attendees are doing well, Mark.
Sure. Thank you. Yep. So I'm going to stop this poll, and well done for everybody who put that. And again, please print off that page, look at the signs, and and that is what you need to memorize, and you have, and you've done great. So let me move us on. We have our second knowledge check coming up just a moment. And I'll launch the second poll.
So this is, who do I report suspected abuse to? Go ahead. There's only, go ahead and just click one of them, and we'll go from there. And yeah, Mark, were you going to do another 2 minutes or just 1 minute, since it's a shorter knowledge check? Or
yeah, I'd like to give everybody maybe a minute and a half on this one. And,
okay.
Yeah, see if we can get all 49 people still here to answer. And anybody who's phoning in, I know I did see a couple of people on a telephone, which is fantastic. If there's any way you would like to speak now, feel free to, or you can use the chat feature if possible. Don't know how that works on the telephone version, but any of those methods, feel free to use. Okay, let's end and share.
It looks to me like everybody is pretty well versed on who they need to report suspected abuse to. In our statute, and which is, I believe I pointed out in an earlier slide, it's either the Department of Family Services, which is the APS office, or some kind of police, sheriff's department, or law enforcement agency. So you can report to one or both of these, actually. So well done, everybody.
Wonderful. And the perpetrators one obviously was a trick and more of a jovial answer, but also it actually had some gravity to it, because if you're having concerns and you're wondering who may be, you may not sure who's doing it, but you may be speaking to somebody in the family network who may be the perpetrator. So if in doubt, go to someone who's of authority and who's neutral, the APS office, law enforcement, and then you will be absolutely fine for how you are reporting it. So I'm glad nobody put that answer down. That makes me actually really happy to see that. Plus also your supervisor, again, hopefully not, but it may be the supervisor in whatever work situation you are who may be part of or doing that abuse. So an external neutral reference is good. And so I just wanted to say that. And there is one final knowledge check, but this one does not have a poll. But thank you to everybody who did those 2 polls. And this next one will require you to either unmute yourselves, and I believe you should have that feature, and you can give me the answers, or again in the chat feature here. And to answer the question, please give examples of the action that you can take to prevent elder abuse from occurring. So from the last few slides that I was telling you all about. Please give me some examples. Again, unmute yourself in the chat box, and I'll give you a minute or two to give those. Just want everybody to be aware of what can you do to help stop this from happening. And don't be shy. Your names won't be on the video recording, but we will see the comment. So we'll see so what do you remember from before?
So we have a couple of comments in the chat. One is educating self and others in your community. That's a wonderful one.
Yes.
Educating elders, that's super important. Yes. Continue to educate community partners about elder abuse and awareness. I love that one. Yes. Join your local APS teams. That's very important. And I can talk more about local APS teams if anybody would like to hear about that. Visit someone in a nursing home often. That's a really important one, because I think that the more visitors an elderly person has, or a disabled person in a nursing home, you know, the kind of the more eyes on, you know, so that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a part of my previous life where I was living in United Kingdom. I was actually a nursing assistant and working in a senior living facility. And I remember the family members who came all the time for their elders, and they were very vigilant, and always like, how much you give them to drink. And obviously some older adults were required their drink to be made into a jelly-like substance so they can drink it. And so everything was micromanaged, and those family members wouldn't, you know, those situations of abuse will probably never happen because they're always aware, always watching. But there were also, I remember one older adult, a female, who had a son who lived nearby who never came to visit her. I worked in that place for a year, didn't see him once, and I was there full time. And that broke my heart a little bit. And it's those kind of situations where, you know, if people are pretty much left and left alone, then abuse could happen. And that was an excellent answer. So it just brought back that memory for me. I just wanted to share that story. Keeping in contact with your older adults in your life, your neighbors and friends and community members, churchgoers, and so on. You know, try and keep the community together, even as people age and may not be involved as much. Try and include them more, because that's when you can prevent this from happening. That's how you make our communities safer places to live in. And whilst I've been talking, there's been a few more comments. So Jane, would you like to go over a couple of those?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for sharing that, Mark. Visits to the elderly that we may know, having conversations with our clients that are elderly to ensure they are doing well. Pay attention to them when they talk. I like that. We meet with so many of these folks and build that relationship of trust for them. I think that that's very well said. Be aware of elderly in your community. Watch for signs of abuse and report if you see signs of abuse. Be a frequent visitor to your elderly neighbors. That's very important, yes. And then take time to listen when seniors need your attention. Yeah, those are all great ones, everyone. Thank you for sharing all of those. They're so important.
Thank
I
you.
really like a couple of you saying take time to listen to them and pay attention, because you can really find out a lot.
Absolutely.
good.
And we'll probably come back to some of these in our Q&A section later. So we'll keep all your comments in the chat active. But we'll move on now as we're approaching 3 o'clock. So at this point, I'd just like to bring your awareness to the references for some of our statistics. So if you just wanted to look at those, but most important thing to be aware about is the contact list for DFS local offices. That how important it was that we got most of these resources from the National Center for Elder Abuse and as part of ACL. So again, please visit their website and give them some kudos for their resources and statistics, which we put into our presentation today. And also University of Southern California had some excellent resources that if you are interested in doing something for your local community rather than at state level, please visit that website as well. And some of you may have participated in the walk-in app for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Wyoming didn't go on the map last year, but this year we have some healthy steps counts. I believe that we probably have about 2.5 million steps. So we're halfway across the United States. So that's not too bad. And well done to everybody who participated in that. Just raising awareness, and every step you walked, you're raising awareness is for Wyoming. So thank you for that. And I'll move on now. And obviously the final thanks goes to Patricia Hall, who's not here, but she had a great part of making this presentation happen. And to Jane, of course, for your involvement and your participation and development of this, and we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you very much. And to Sharon in the community living section, thank you for helping with the admin side of this presentation. And we are now moving to our Q&A section. So we will be ending the recording, and we appreciate you being here today. And but this is not ending. It's just simply the recording part is ending. And Jane, any last comments for the recording before we leave that section?
I don't think so, Mark. I think I'm good.
Okay, so we'll stop that.